Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. Among the most active artists in the 80s and 90s, the American Bob Ross, a painter, has taught admirers of art on a certain artwork style, but he has also imparted lessons of charity and empathy to his audience. His composure manner, calming, voice and instruction have provided solace to those who continues to reverberate today. In spite of everything, there is a sinister secret that encircles this legendary man's life. Bob Ross, 52, at last acknowledged what we all suspected before his passing. Prior to, he became well known as Robert Bob Norman. On October 29, 1942, Ross was born in Jack with his parents at Daytona Beach, Florida. Ollie Ross as well. His parents were attractive, typical, with his father employed as his mother is a waitress, and he is a carpenter. At an early age, it was clear that Ross possessed a natural friendliness that he expanded to include animals. As a child, he frequently took in injured creatures such as armadillos, squirrels, snakes, including alligators, that take care of them until they were well. In his subsequent years, a few of these creatures even produced appearances while recording his display. For those of you who may not be aware. Additionally, Ross has a half-brother named Jim, even if he never went into detail on the later and just brought him up in moving on. For a while, Ross began working as a carpenter with his father when he stopped attending school. Here's where he suffered injuries and lost some of his index finger on the left. Fortunately, Ross was not hampered in any way by this. Acts that he was capable of routine duties, such as carrying a pallet appropriately in his later years of employment. When Ross became 18, he responded to the call to duty and joined the U.S. Military Air Force. He was posted there as a medical records clerk prior to his ascent throughout the ranks, and emerged as the initial sergeant of the Eisen Air Force Base Clinic in Alaska. Now, this region is known for its magnificent landscape, emphasizing the raw beauty of nature. It is still common today. This was Ross's initial impression of mountains and snow became one of his recurrent themes when he was painting. However, despite everything, there was a possibility experience that altered the course of forever Bob Ross's life. He stumbled upon the magic of Bill Alexander's television program as he was painting with oil, working as a bartender on the side. By way of Ross became aware of Alexander's show, Alap Prima, a picture from the 16th century manner that is currently known as wet on wet, given that the paint hasn't dried completely yet. Adding a fresh layer, it enables the painter to complete the canvas more quickly, resulting in a quicker completion. In his presentation, Alexander was able to complete the painting in 30 minutes. This motivated Ross. It needs to be understood that Ross was exhausted at the moment, in addition to work, but also from being a single parent to his kid Steve Dad. For this reason, painting has evolved into a haven for him and a powerful enthusiasm. Years later, Ross disclosed that observing Alexander complete the paintings swiftly back then nearly infuriated him. For the days it took him to complete, the elderly man may accomplish in just minutes. It appears that luck has been on Ross's side since he discovered Alexander was giving a lesson. His post was only an hour distant from the lecture. He viewed this as a chance to gain knowledge, learn more about painting methods and locate work as an apprentice to Alexander. By the seminar's conclusion, Ross had become into different dude. His love of painting turned into a complete obsession. However, regretfully, he was transferred to Fairbanks' Eielson Air Force Base, Alaska. The aspiring famous painter examined the wet and wet method widely, so it wasn't a surprise. His mastery of it came as a surprise. He painted Alaskan landscapes using this method, scenery found on gold mining pans. It became well liked and steadily sold. Thus, eventually, to a stage where his revenues from painting sales exceeded those of his military pay. Ross eventually took a break from 39-year-old military life with the Master Sergeant's rank. As stated previously, Bob Ross was well known for his consoling voice, which is somewhat humorous because throughout his time in the service, he was compelled to adopt a harsh and cruel character to instruct his troops, as exhausting as Ross discovered that it was for both parties. Ease while drawing, which he began to, during his daily work breaks, he practices. Regarding his strong macho image, Ross pledged never to speak loudly again after Head departed from the military. Ross's curiosity about painting developed into a serious passion. He once enrolled in an art course at the USO Club in Anchorage. To his surprise, he discovered that he didn't agree with his teachers of painting, since the latter were more interested in painting abstracts. As everyone is aware, Ross is more likely to paintings of landscapes, which are his recurring motif in his subsequent paintings. Consequently, he continued to use Alexander's method and enhanced his own work. Ross, who is now retired, went back to Florida, where he did extensive research on the paintings of Alexander. It didn't want for him to pursue a career in travel Alexander Magic salesman and tutor company for art supplies. Everything went smoothly. Fairly well for a time. Particularly, Alexander was searching for additional artwork, teachers to aid in the dissemination of his lessons, in addition to his remarkable range of art materials. It even had a few unique instruments, such as Alexander's recognizable large brushes, a palette magic and a knife he invented himself. White is a basic paint that is used as the cornerstone of each Bill Alexander's artwork. Regarding his son, Ross left him in his second's care. Wife, in order for him to serve as one of the salesmen for Alexander in Salem, Oregon. He and his wife agreed to give him to work on this project for a year, and if it failed, he would return the house. Ross was able to connect because of this employment with his clients, and among them, Kowalski, Annette, was among the principal causes of Ross's rise to he has become an iconic figure. Annette Kowalski and Walt, her spouse, were mourning their 25-year-old's passing son, who lost his life in a vehicle accident. For Annette was dead for days on end and lacked a plan. In contrast, Walt was incredibly devoted to his spouse. As life as it happened, she began to feel things once more when she realized Bill Alexander, urging her to life and the planet have more to offer, is brimming with wonder. Observing this favorable shift, Walt contacted Alexander's business, inquiring about the existence of any workshops close by. The closest one was 1,000 miles away, distant, but the pair decided to make the lengthy journey in order for Anne to go to one of Bob Ross's meetings in Florida's Clearwater. At this point, all evidence of Ross's time in the military was removed from his face. He was wearing a bob and the slack attitude of a simple-minded hippie who loved to apply paint. Prior to their controversy, Bob Ross had saw the older man as his hero, at all times acknowledging where credit was owed. He even devoted his second book on how-tos How I'm Writing This in Bill's honor. In When People Say That There Are No Heroes, I am extremely grateful to have been motivated and impacted by a giant Bill Alexander in the art field. He has served as both my buddy and mentor, been quite helpful with everything I've completed. However, like with all positive things, despite their partnership, which originated from a mutual appreciation of nature and painting, turned to face the formation of Bob Ross, Incas, the entire concept of Ross's independent business originated with the Kowalskis, who inquired if the former was willing to give in DC a few of classes. Of course, Ross was I'm up for the job, because greater effort equals extra cash. Even the Kowalskis concurred, to compensate him for his labor, while further paying for his lodgings by allowing him to remain in their extra room at house. Naturally, even the art supplies and other instruments were covered by the couple. Right away, Annette already enjoyed Bob, and it happened at one of throughout their meetings when she informed him that he could start his own business. She and her even Walt, Ross's spouse, helped out, and the money of his wife, so he may create his own business. Despite the abilities and connections, Bob Ross Inc. had difficulties significantly in the initial years of its base. Additionally, it's critical that your viewers be aware of the tension between the two. The interaction between the painters is still pending. Actually, Alexander was even giving enough to increase Ross's power. The assistance of elder painters came in the form of permitting Ross to accompany him on film for a period. Therefore, it was normal to observe Ross and Alexander are on the same screen. One promotional video was shot in which Alexander visible behind the brush, which was regarded as a joke and casual banter between them, provide the powerful brush to God Almighty. Only their relationship went south when Annette and Ross YPB reached out to Kowalski, the PBS station in the area, when they were, in Indiana, operating a workshop. Ross, of course, seized the chance. Additionally, despite Alexander's superior at the station, the bill spot was diminished by the popularity of Ross's personal exhibition, The Joy of Painting, due to his grounded tone and the way his appeal outperformed Alexander's in it. Didn't take long in front of the camera for the program to become widely popular achievement. It was soon taken up by various stations, and Ross quickly became known as one of TV's most prominent working idols. As depressing as it was, this is the main cause. The reason behind the argument between the two painters. Few individuals understand how such a positive and uplifting show stemmed from such situations. If you don't find this distressing, hold off till you learn about Bob's fate. Later, Ross, Inc. In a conversation with 1991's New York Times, Bill Alexander revealed how Ross betrayed him, claiming to be the person who created the wheat and wet method, but Ross believed he could it's better. Regarding Bob Ross, Inc., business prospered because Ross was already recording his art lesson in 1982 in a station in Virginia's Falls Church, with the show will air on 60 PBS stations. Taking into account all of his efforts, and Bob Ross carried out all of his paintings for nothing and received payment from the art tools, how-to books, and video recordings. Beginning in January, The Joy of Painting, 1983 to May 1994. However, there are still repeats to this day across a number of channels, including Create and Even on Hulu, a streaming service. Starting out small, Bob Ross Inc. grew to a $115 million company that contained lessons taught in his manner and methodology with teachers who Ross obtained his certification. An estimate of Ross completed almost 30,000 paintings during his lifetime, but his creations are somewhat uncommon on the market because the majority of among these are some that are under Bob Ross Inc., beneath the Kowalski family. Due of his tendency for secrecy, when the world learned about Bob Ross's premature death on July 4, 1995, following experiencing issues as a result of lymphoma. Prior to this, the renowned painter furthermore had a number of medical conditions that mostly resulted from his status as a chain smoker. At the age of 52, he already had 7 paintings in stock for what was intended to be season 32 of The Pleasure of Painting. Today, the picture and Bob Ross's image is inextricably linked, toniture and artwork, and is frequently connected to optimism. His image has become part of popular culture, so a lot of TV series, films, characters, and it inspires a lot of other people. In October 2015, a well-known streaming service. In fact, Twitch held a 9-day marathon of consecutive installments of The Joy of In Order to remember what would have been the 73rd birthday of the painter. The event was so well received that Twitch agreed to rebroadcast the program each Monday, using a percentage of the earnings donated to multiple recipients from the stream nonprofits. Next year, streaming, the massive Netflix service incorporated one of Bob Ross's The Beauty is Everywhere television series to their streaming service, which helped not just fresh admirers, but also reaffirmed curiosity about the works and life of the painter. This increase was seen by the Kowalskis and followed the fad. They discovered achievement in their endeavor, establishing a Bob Ross-focused YouTube channel as well as reaching 1 million members. Just a year after it was established, enough to put it simply, it's almost difficult for them to overlook and fail, to take advantage of the chance considering that they are the only entity in charge of Ross's image. Regarding the Kowalskis, the pair become the company's sole proprietors after Ross and his spouse passed away. It was written, according to the company's guidelines, that losing a spouse would result into the stock being split evenly between the other partners. As it turned out, Ross and his family were outlived by the Kowalskis' second spouse, and it benefited their advantage because they have consistently been entrepreneur from the beginning. Later on years, they even fiercely resisted Ross's family members for reportedly attempting to sign the prestigious The Rights of Painters to them prior to his demise. Ross was not a combative man and put his family first. What he did, instead, the Kowalskis were written off, out of his own volition, and gave the rights to Hishi's boy's name, a likeness, and estate Jim, his half-brother, and Steve. From a calming program that provided solace, the struggle for rights turned into a rather terrible, and the Kowalskis weren't actually slowing down. They retorted that every action Bob Ross took, while running, there was work for hire at the company. In the end, the decision favored the Kowalskis, and they prevailed in court. It was a series of messes, yet thankfully, luck quickly worked in favor of the Ross family that is left. As soon as the Kowalskis retired and their daughter, when Joan assumed control of the business, she made several modifications. In contrast, to her brutal parents, she opened out more about the business and even grant access to outsiders and selling the merchandise outside their main commercial endeavors. Additionally, she was in charge of an agreement with Jimmy and Steve Ross, Bob Ross's half-brother Cox, allowing the authority to utilize the Ross name and resemblance without entering difficulty. This action also gave Steve Ross will resume his artistic career and begin painting career once more, a habit he had to give up, out of concern for a lawsuit. In spite of, as a legend, Bob Ross is among the small number of famous people who were able to conceal the majority of his life, what we are aware of his private life, that he is a father and has 3 wives, to 2 kids. His initial child was from a person with whom he was romantically involved when he was younger. He had a son from his marriage to Vivian Ridge. Additionally, Robert Stephen Ross, his son, grew up to become one of his descendants, painter. Ross and Ridge's marriage eventually resulted in a divorce, but his bond with his son was as solid as never. Steve Ross even made an appearance in The Pleasure of Painting a few times and become a Ross-certified adult teacher, transferring his elderly father's heritage. Young Steve made an appearance at the final The Joy of Paintings episode, initial season, in which he read out loud the viewers' how-to inquiries aimed at Ross. The older Ross, of course, took time and provided the best response to their question, as he was also able to work on the canvas until he was done. Ross getting married again. In the same year, he separated from Ridge. His second marriage was given to Jane, and theirs was a marriage without children. Their partnership would have survived longer if she hadn't passed away from cancer in 1995. Ross's third and last union was within 1995. Linda Brown was only 2 months before to his passing. Details about Bob Ross's private life is somewhat limited, and the number of interviews is quite small, where we can learn more about his as an individual, as demonstrated by Bob Ross the Cheers, painter. Apart from that, almost everything is kept secret, because Bob Ross Inc. is in charge of it. Guaranteeing his privacy and intellectual property is not included in the public view. Another item that many Bob Ross is the type of person that makes me wonder. He was a religious person. Regretfully, we might never fully understand it provided how solitary he was. However, what we do know is that he publicly said what he believed. The existence of a creator, God accountable for everything in our environment. In addition, he completed his God blesses his viewers. Ross kept up his care as well. For animals, caring for sick animals, some of them even made brief appearances, manifestations in his writings in Joy of Painting. As soon as the CO-19 pandemic struck, the episodes of The Joy of Life were rerun on the BBC Painting, enabling spectators to appreciate the Bob Ross's writings and lessons in the convenience of their own homes.